Will you take a moment and pray with me, please? O Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be pleasable and accepting in your sight, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
Well, last Sunday evening, the Bible study group engaged in a conversation about how Jesus is often portrayed in pictures and in our own minds. And that conversation sort of led me into a journey this week, seeking out pictures of Jesus. We often see Jesus as an Anglo-Saxon male with blue eyes and blonde hair. We actually have a picture just like that hanging out here in the lobby. And we also often see Jesus with a smile on his face and a perfectly white robe that doesn't show any sign of traveling on a dirt road. And we also have several images of him with children, performing miracles, eating the Last Supper, or on the cross. And we even have pictures of him in his resurrected form. But if you were to go beyond our own ideas, things we have hanging here in the church, perhaps we've seen in our own Bibles or talked about in Sunday school, you might find something you would be surprised at. How many of you here have ever searched for images of Jesus on Google? Anybody? 1, 2, 3. Well, if you haven't done it, I hope you'll do it this week. It's really interesting. Sometimes you can get pictures of stained glass windows where there's different versions of Jesus. You might even get an action figure every once in a while. And you might find a Middle Eastern version of Jesus, perhaps a carpenter. However, despite whatever image of Jesus that you find, or the images that we have here in church, you probably haven't seen Jesus portrayed the same way as we have Jesus portrayed in the Gospel of Mark this morning. We have a man who's become well known, and it's hard for him now to blend into any crowd. He is a celebrity and is sought out wherever he goes. He has earned a reputation of performing miracles, so people seek him out to do just that. Perhaps what Mark hasn't stated so clearly for us in the text this morning is that Jesus has been on the run from his celebrity status for a while. If you go back just a few chapters before what we read this morning, you'll remember and see that Jesus has learned of the death of his cousin, John the Baptist. He is so upset by the death that he tries to tell his disciples that they must leave the area where they fed 5,000 people so he can mourn alone. He tells the disciples specifically, "Come away by yourselves to a lonely place and rest a while." They get on a boat and go to a place they think is going to be empty, a place where they can rest, a getaway of sorts. However, the crowds were smart enough and followed Jesus and were waiting for him on the shoreline. It is here that we learn that Jesus is moved with compassion on the crowds, spends time with them, eats with them, heals them, teaches them. It is from this place he again tries to escape his celebrity status and find rest. He dismisses his disciples and says, "Go on ahead of me, I'll join you later." And he goes up to the hills to pray. But before he can make it to the hills to pray, the disciples get into some trouble. And Jesus has to come to the rescue on the boat and take care of them. So here we find Jesus on the heels of helping the disciples with their problems. Jesus remaining in the boat and ordering them to go to a region where Jews did not normally go. It was not a luxury resort where they could pay to be alone. It was not a region known for its beaches, its fine cuisine, or opportunities for rest. It was a region where Gentiles lived. Jesus and his disciples were going to be foreigners in this land. We do know that Jesus arrives to the land as a stranger, seeking much needed rest, seeking a place to mourn for his beloved John, and seeking a place where his celebrity status would finally leave him alone. Now, this is an image of Jesus that I don't think we often see in our pictures, or perhaps in our Sunday school literature. A Jesus who is exhausted is who we have in our gospel this morning. Perhaps we should see this image more often. After all, the kids did point out to us, it must get exhausting to perform all those miracles. And we know that Jesus does have one other instance where he is sleeping so hard that a storm doesn't even wake him. Jesus can be a hard sleeper at times, like any person, when they need their rest. So as I was researching images this week of Jesus, I found an interesting portrayal of Jesus from the 2nd century. Evidently, there was an argument going on in the early church about whether or not Jesus ever ate, drank, or slept. And the battle went on for a while, but eventually the argument was resolved with a reminder that Jesus was indeed human. And Jesus, being a human, must have had to have had food, water, and rest. However, our gospel text this morning is clear in reminding us that Jesus did all three, and that's not necessarily a battle we have to relive. Our text today is a good reminder, though, that Jesus, in his human form, needed to rest. He needs rest in order to be restored to do the ministry and work of kingdom building. Our text is unusual in just the way we find, and it's not just unusual in the way we find an exhausted Jesus. It is also unusual for us to see Jesus interact with people the way he does in our lesson this morning. I don't know about you, but I struggle with having a Jesus tell the woman that she was like a dog. Is this the Jesus that we all know? And is this the Jesus that we learned about in Sunday school and in church? And does Jesus really treat people this way? Especially the mother of a young girl who's possessed by a demon? Some scholars have argued that this answer was appropriate for a Jewish man to give a Gentile woman. And others say that in his state of grief and exhaustion, he had a slip of the tongue. Well, no matter the reason why Jesus said he did what he did to the woman, we must be honest with ourselves. This is not an image of Jesus that we readily have. We do not have an image of Jesus denying help because of someone's social status or because of his own location in life as an exhausted Jewish man seeking to get away from his celebrity status and deal with his grief. We know that Jesus, in this case, has literally crossed borders to get to the place where the woman finds him. However, another rarely examined image of Jesus in this case, in his interaction with the woman, is what it meant to cross boundaries in the healing of her daughter. And responding to the woman's reminder that even dogs eat crumbs from their master's table, Jesus had to cross social and religious boundaries. A woman had spoken up and out, not something that was a norm for her to do, especially to a Jewish man. And when Jesus then heals her daughter, we have an example of Jesus being willing to cross religious boundaries. A Jewish man who had come to fulfill Jewish law and reform the Jewish tradition had healed a non-Jew. He has healed someone considered to be unclean in the land where it was unclean for Jews, since it was a region where only Gentiles lived. What an example. What an image. Despite being exhausted and in grief, Jesus heals. Jesus crosses borders to heal the most unexpected person and the most unlikely of places. Jesus, according to Mark, does not just heal once, but twice. We know that he then heals a man who has been deaf and most likely mute most of his life. We have Jesus crossing borders here as well, to heal the Gentiles in a strange land. However, this time Jesus is not alone when healing the deaf man. There's a crowd that bears witness to this miracle. And yet again, we find Jesus' status as a celebrity becoming all the buzz. Jesus begs them to say nothing. But as human nature goes, when you tell someone not to say anything, what happens? The whole world finds out about it, right? So our image of Jesus also ends in an uncommon one too. Jesus standing in a crowd, begging for only one thing, while the opposite is taking place. We have Jesus standing in a crowd exhausted, with any hope of rest being thwarted because of his celebrity status by healing two people. So what do we make of the image of Jesus portrayed in Mark's Gospel this morning? It is